Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. One of the interesting things to watch during this draft process is how much it did not favor, or at least it appears to have not favored Shador Sanders at all. Now, some of this was going to happen regardless. Some of this, I think, is due to how Shador himself has personally handled this pre-draft process, and like a larger problem that I think is plaguing a lot of prospects that I'm going to talk about in this video. But Shador was in the conversation for number one quarterback in this draft class. 4 months ago in December, when I said I think Shedor's probably the best quarterback in this class, wasn't high on the class at all, but I thought Shador was the best quarterback in this class. That didn't get much pushback. If I said that a month ago in March, then all of a sudden it's going to get all the pushback in the world, right? Like somehow, without any football being played between January and April, it got down to Shador might be the number one quarterback, maybe Cam Ward's the number one quarterback, to Cam Ward is definitely the number one quarterback in this draft class. And I find that interesting. And some of this has to do with potential. Some of this has to do with measurables. Some of this has to do with Shador's arm talent and comparing it to Cam Ward's. But I think a lot of it has to do with the weird way that the Sanders family has handled Shador's pre-draft process. And look, I'm not a big critic of Deion Sanders. I think what Deion is doing at Colorado is actually quite good, and he's demonstrated that he's good at his job at Colorado. I'm not one of these people who hate Deion. I'm not a Deion stan by any means, but I'm not a Deion hater, right? Like, when you talk about Deion or you're critical of him or how they have handled this whole ordeal, I understand that it's going to attract people who are Deion haters or attract people who are Deion defenders, and they're going to get mad at me and act like I'm just a Deion hater. But I do think there are some valid criticisms of how they have handled this, that if Shador does fall, we're going to have to talk about, right? And it looks like the Shador slide is very possible at this point. So let's start with a couple of the things I think are mistakes. Some of these are unique to the Sanders family apparatus. Some of these things are not. One of the things I don't think is not unique to the Sanders family apparatus, and I think actually has a lot to do with the advice that agents are giving these athletes now, that I think is just bad advice, is the limited workouts for pre-draft stuff. And what I mean by this is, back in the day, unless you were the uncontested number one overall pick in the draft, you were expected to do every drill, right? You were expected to throw every time you had the chance to throw. If you were Mario Williams, you didn't have to do that, right? But if you weren't Mario Williams or Adrian Peterson or Joe Thomas, you had to work out. You had to do these workouts. And that has started to trickle down into different tiers of prospects, to where now it's like top 10 guys don't have to do that. Then now top 15 guys. And now if you're projected in the first round, you don't have to do that. Now we're getting guys who are projected to go in the third round, who have a lot to prove if they really want to go where they want to go to in the first round, sitting out and not doing drills when it would be, quite frankly, advantageous for them to do drills. Right. And maybe this is just an old head rant. Maybe this is just me being an older NFL fan and things aren't the way they used to be. But I do think there is some value to saying, hey, You're going to do a 40 time. Let me try to get the best 40 time possible. Because if you run a slow 40 and you are expected to be slow, I don't think there's any harm in that. But if you run a better 40 and the people expect you to be slow, there's tons of benefit. I think a lot of athletes have forgotten how much benefits or how much it benefits them to participate in the pre-draft process. And I think Shador is somebody who did not really participate enough in the pre-draft process. I think Shedeur should have ran a 40 time. Would it have been fast? Would it have been slow? I don't know. But it would have left it not up to the imaginations of a ton of scouts, right? And he definitely needed to do a 3-cone drill. One of the big concerns I have about Shedeur is when he played better athletes, better teams, right? Big Ten teams, top of college football, like NFL talent all over the field, especially on the defensive line. When he played those teams that had draft picks on the D-line, he struggled. His athleticism, his pocket habits, they bit him in the ass more than they usually did. So I need to know, hey, how fast is he? What's his 3-cone? He didn't run it. So I don't know. I can only assume it's very slow if he wanted to hide it. This is not unique to Shedeur. This is the one I was talking about where I'm like, a lot of players are doing it. Will Howard hasn't run a 40. Why? Makes no sense for Will Howard to not run a 40, right? He's a projected 3rd-round pick. He's not protecting any stock by not running that 40. So what is he not running the 40 for? It only benefits him. Who's giving him this advice? It's bad advice. Shador Sanders not throwing at the combine. I thought that was strange. That would be an opportunity for him to stand out. He's one of the most accurate passers in college football. Why not demonstrate that on a wide stage? And this leads me into the bigger problem, and this most certainly has to do with the Sanders family around him that I think has given GMs a bit of a bad taste in their mouth. And we'll see. Again, it's all dependent on where Shedeur gets drafted. But I've made this comment before, and I think if you really think about it, you will realize this is true as well. Why does it feel like the Sanders family goes out of their way to obstruct your view of Shador Sanders? Right? They don't just let him throw at the combine. They don't just send him to the Senior Bowl. They got to send him to the East-West Shrine game because that's the game they have control over. And then he does a couple of interviews, and then they shut him down out of the East-West Shrine practice. Why in the world would you do that? Like the thinking at the time was, oh, he's definitely going to go top 3. He met with the 3 top teams, and that's why he shut it down. But right now, it's April. It doesn't look like he's going to go in the top 3. So why did he even shut it down? Again, with the pre-draft stuff, it's not just, hey, this is Shador Sanders. Let's put him in this environment. Let's let him sink or swim by himself. Let's see what he can do. It's always, let's see how we can obstruct the view of Shedeur, control the view of Shedeur. And when you do that enough, it makes people wonder what's wrong with them, even if there's not much wrong with them. I think he's a good prospect. He should be a 1st-round pick. But they've done enough of this obstructing of the view where I think they've made his value drop. Now, some people are going to say this is a 4D chess move, Quincy. This is on purpose. See, they don't need the money from being drafted. So if he drops and he goes to a team that's better off, that's better for Shedeur. And that's the strategy that Dion is using. Here's the flaw with everybody who brings that up as a strategy. Just because Shedeur falls in the draft don't mean he's going to go to a good team. That lowers the price for everybody. It lowers the price for a team that could trade up from the top of the 2nd round to get him. It lowers the price for a team to trade back and get him. Like, just because you get drafted in the 20s don't mean that that team that takes you in the 20s is going to be a good team. The only thing it guarantees is the further and further you slide in the draft, the less and less that organization is committed to you. And what helped a player get over the hump at the quarterback position a lot of the times is the team being committed to him. Bryce Young's a good example. Played awful his first year. If he were the 20th pick in the draft, that would have been it for Bryce Young his first year. He would have never got another chance again. But because Bryce Young was the first pick in the draft, he got another opportunity. And then he got another opportunity after that. And with that third opportunity, Bryce Young started to look like an NFL quarterback. Only thing you're guaranteeing by sliding in the draft is you're getting less rope to start your NFL career. That's not what the Sanders family is going for. I promise you they understand this dynamic as well, and they don't want Shedeur to fall back in this draft at all. They want him to go in the top 10 because top 10 picks, they get to stick around. They get to have ups and downs when they're young. A 30th pick, a lot less leeway, a lot less commitment from the team there. It's up to a lot of different decisions being made, especially if that team's in win now mode. And even if you do fall to 20, well, could go to a bad team even though that you went to pick 20 because that team could just trade up for that pick. So I don't think this is an intentional strategy by the Sanders family. I think this is a strategy backfiring, right? They went with this scarcity model on Shedeur. We're going to hide him. We're going to obscure the view of Shedeur. If you want to do a dinner and a private meeting with Shador Sanders, well, you got to do it with Travis Hunter too. Or it's actually the other way around. If you want to do a private meeting with Travis Hunter, you got to tag along with Shedeur too, right? It's never just straight up, here's Shador Sanders. And one of the biggest questions about Shedeur that Travis doesn't have, because Travis didn't grow up as a Sanders, right? He was a regular high school kid, went to Colorado, went to Jackson State, and then got involved with the Sanders family. But he's played outside the structure of the Sanders family before. Shedeur has never done that. Shedeur has never not been a quarterback for a team that doesn't have his head coach as his dad, or he hasn't done it very often. So there are already giant questions about if Shedeur is somebody who can handle not being in a situation ran by his father. But every single step through the draft process seems to go through his father. At some point, the Sanders family had to trust what Shedeur could bring to the table and say, hey, we're going to send Shedeur to the Senior Bowl. We're going to let him cook because we know he's better than all those quarterbacks there. We don't need to control the environment. Let's just let you see what Shedeur can do. But instead, they demonstrated a lack of confidence in him that's rubbing off on other teams, or at least it appears to be rubbing off on other teams. Because when I see them not let him throw at the combine, why? Because it's not controlled. You know, he's perfectly capable of doing it. It's not like he was injured. Why can't he throw at the combine? Well, it's not controlled. We want him to throw in a controlled environment. Okay. What are you trying to hide? Right? I would imagine Shedeur, a very accurate passer, would have been fine at the combine, would have looked great at the combine, would have looked great at the Senior Bowl. But instead, he does the weird stunt at the East-West Shrine game. And then the combine comes. He doesn't want to do drills. He left a very bad impression on a ton of teams, right? Went to the podium, had the hat backwards, went to the podium, you know, kind of was really nonchalant about it. And I can't help but think that you left a lot of bad taste in a lot of GM's mouths, and I can't blame them for feeling that way. Again, I'm somebody who was very, not high on Shedeur, but I was higher on Shedeur than I was Cam Ward. I'm surprised that we're at the point where Cam Ward's clearly going to go number one overall. And the big question is what's going to happen to Shedeur? And I don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, New York went out and got Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. I don't think they're going to draft Shedeur Sanders. So what, maybe the Saints are going to do it? Maybe the Raiders put him behind Geno. I don't know what's going to happen with him, but it doesn't seem like it's headed in a great direction, at least on draft night. What he becomes as a player is completely separate from this conversation. I think Shador is going to be in the right situation. He could be a starting quarterback, but where does he get taken? I don't know. And I think some of that has to do with the fact that every time in the pre-draft process, you try to take a look at Shador Sanders, it feels like you have to view him through a funhouse mirror. Feels like they're never giving you the straight up on what's going on with him. What does he look like? How much does he weigh? You know, they're trying to obscure stuff. Now, some of the controversies that come out about Shador, some of these are ridiculous. Like the whole pat the ball thing that people are complaining about right now with Shador. I don't give a damn about that at all. I don't care. That's a stupid controversy. But I do think the amount that the Sanders family has gone out their way to make it difficult to get a clean look at Shador Sanders makes me more concerned that there's something there that they're trying to hide with him that might be concerning about his projection to the NFL. Because what they've done with him, and I would say this with a lot of guys in the pre-draft process, there is something to demonstrating confidence about what you offer as a player. And how you demonstrate confidence about what you offer as a player in the pre-draft process is by doing the stuff, right? Like that's how Baker Mayfield went number 1 overall. He did all the stuff. He did Senior Bowl, Combine, all of that, right? He demonstrated confidence that he was the most pro-ready guy, so he did all of the stuff. That's what Shador is trying to sell to people right now. And in order to go super early and be Shador where you're not prototypical size, you got to demonstrate that you have the stuff and that you're confident in the stuff, but you've hidden all of it. So it doesn't seem like we're that confident. I made this analogy, and I think this is the best way to describe it. Shador Sanders right now feels like a video game that got good trailers, but they don't let anybody play it until the game comes out officially. And that's just a huge red flag, right? Like if you ever were into a video game and they drop all these cool trailers, but they don't let you play it, you already know it's going to be a crazy day 1 patch or something like that. Like you already know something's funky is going up, right? There's no pre-release reviews. They haven't let anybody play it before the game releases. You're like, okay, something's up. That's what I'm getting with Shador. The trailers look good with Shador. The film's fine with Shador. I like Shador's film. There's some questions about how he translates to NFL level of play, but you know, the tape's cool. But what concerns me the most is how much the Sanders family has gone out their way to guard everybody from just seeing him play quarterback straight up. It's been strange, and I wonder if that's had an effect on his stock. Y'all let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.